All right guys, well, check out the Euybike K6 Pro. And at first glance, you can probably already tell this is not like most e-bikes we see. You can see this large cross member here, and that's because this is a folding e-bike, but it's still got the heart and soul of a full suspension e-moto bike. We've got front to back suspension, we've got big 20 by 4 inch tires, a massive 1500 watt motor, and a really punchy fun ride. So let's do a deep dive on all the specs and features of the new Euybike K6 Pro in this review. All right guys, so the Euybike K6 Pro, this is priced at $12.99, and as you can see, it's a moto or moped style e-bike. Now this is UL 2849 safety certified, and they say in terms of weight that this weighs about 81 pounds. I'm assuming that's without the rear rack though, because when I put this one on the scale, when I got it in for testing, it had the rear rack on it, and this one came out to right about 86 pounds. And the battery itself about 10.2 pounds, but fully dressed out the way you see it right here, 86 pounds. So it's got some heft to it. Now, in terms of things like colors and sizing, this is the dark gray color. And if you want something different, they do have two other colors, but they're both going to be in a camo configuration. There's a yellow camo and a green camo. But if you want a solid color option, it's going to only be in this dark gray, which I think is pretty universal for most folks. Now, in terms of sizing, there's just one frame size, this size we have here, and that fits a pretty wide range of 5'7" on the low end, all the way up to 6'5". Now, I'm 5'11", 5'11 and a half on a good day, and I found that I only had a little bit more room to grow if I was going to be maybe 6'2", riding this bike, where I felt like it still fit me well. So I'd say if you're watching this at home, considering it, and you're in that 6'3", 6'4", 6'5 group up on the very tippy edge of that scale, maybe take one for a test ride or just check the geometry numbers on the website and measure your own body to make sure it's something that would fit you well, because I do think on the higher end, around 6'3" and above, it might start to feel a little cramped, but at my height, roughly at 5'11" to 6 foot area, it felt just fine, and I'm sure there's a couple more inches where 6'1", 6'2" would still feel really good. Just something to be cautious of or aware of at that 6'3" to 6'5" window. Just test one before you pull the trigger on it. Now, in terms of the geo numbers for this frame itself, this is going to be a 47-inch wheelbase from rear hub to front hub. The reach up top is about 17 inches, which you could adjust in theory by loosening the stem bolt and moving that BMX bar back and forth. You have about 7 inches of adjustability in the alloy seat post, and the max payload on here is about 400 pounds with the standover height, so the lowest point you can stand over the bike, at 25 inches. So in terms of things like wheels, we have a 20-inch wheel setup, and this is wrapped in a Kenda Crusade tire, a 20 by 4 inch wide tire. I like having 4-inch wide tires, not only because these have wide, aggressive, like all-terrain tread patterns on them, they also have some puncture protection built into them, reflective sidewalls, and then with a nice wide volume like a 4-inch wide tire, the max payload or the max PSI range on this is between 5 and 30 pounds. You notice that's pretty low, and I think that's going to be awesome on a bike like this. When you can air down your tires a little bit, it's going to improve your grip, it's going to improve your comfort, and if you want to maximize efficiency and speed, you can always max them up to 30 pounds, but it's just nice knowing you get that extra cushion and comfort from the lower volume that you can run in these tires. I like to run around 15 PSI right in the middle of the range, and that feels really solid, and it still has plenty of grip and traction, but it also has enough pressure inside of it to still roll efficiently and still get some good speeds out of it. Now, when it comes to things like mounting points and rear racks, we do get a rear rack that's actually included free right now when you purchase the bike. I have no idea how long that will last, but for now, fenders and racks are included. Now, fenders we have front and back, they are plastic fenders, and the rear rack here is rated for 200 pounds. It's got a reflector attached to it and lots of different like modular ways to strap on your gear, lots of mounting points, which is a good thing because there's no other mounting points on the frame. So usually we'll see a couple mounting bosses for you to add things like a water bottle cage or another accessory. But in this case, your gear is going to be limited to what you put on the rack or maybe what you carry in a backpack because there's no extra mounting points on the frame. Now, in terms of lighting, we do have a front moto style headlight. It's a nice bright LED with a flat plane to it, so it looks really cool when it goes out in front of you. And then in the seat here, they also have a battery-powered tail light that needs to be turned on by pushing the button under the seat, which I think is going to be ideal for a bike that's not always meant to be in the city. You may not always want the tail light on, but if you do want it on, you can just hit the button and that will be running. Just keep in mind it is battery activated, so remember to turn it off and remember to check those batteries from time to time. So when it comes to things like power on this bike, that's another strong suit for the Euybike K6 Pro. This has a rear hub motor. Now this is rated at 1,000 watts nominally, but it peaks at 1,500 watts and puts out 96 Newton meters of torque, which is a pretty beefy setup on a bike like this. Now on one hand, that's gonna be what you need when you have a roughly 85-pound bike. And on the other hand, it's still gonna be what you need when you got a bike that has 4-inch wide tires and has the ability to go off-road with full suspension. You want that off-road muscle, that grit, that ability to kind of grunt through things and go fast. And that's exactly what this motor provides. Now it's got 5 levels of PAS that are activated through a cadence sensor in the wheels. Now the cadence sensor on this, not all cadence sensors are programmed the same. Some of them immediately give you feedback. As soon as you start moving those pedals, you feel that motor kick on. Some of them ramp it up. Other ones may take a half turn of the pedals before the motor kicks on and it may be instant. They're just all kind of done differently. Now in the case of the Euybike K6 Pro, this one's cadence sensor requires a full 360-degree rotation of the pedals. So you will do a full pedal before that motor kicks on, at least in the one that I was sent for testing. Now I will say, I'm telling you that because the first few times I rode it, I would start pedaling and I would think, why is the motor not kicking on? And then boom, it would go. And that's another thing to know, that this is set up to go pretty punchy and fast from the beginning. So if you're not used to that, I would say start in the lower PAS levels. But if you put this on PAS 5 and just start cranking on the throttle or the pedals, you're gonna get a nice jumpy start. Now some of you definitely will want, and others may feel a little intimidated by. So just something to be aware of. If you like a punchy, just fast, muscly motor, that's exactly what this thing has to offer. It can be a lot of fun in a lot of scenarios. I had a lot of fun on this bike, but if you're someone who likes to take it easy, just keep that in mind. Now the battery on this is fully encased in this down tube here, and it's a 48-volt battery with 25 amp hours, giving us a pretty massive 1,200 watt hours of power. Now you can remove this battery, and normally I would pull it out right here and show it to you, which I'll do in just a couple minutes, because the only way this battery comes out is when the bike is in its folded position, giving you access to the back end of that down tube. Now on the outside edge of that down tube, you've got a power button you can press and see what level of battery charge you have on the bike without even turning it on. And it comes with a set of keys, so you can simply unlock it and pull it out, which again, I'll show you in just a couple of minutes when we fold up the bike, because that's the only time you can remove the battery. Now, when it comes to range, they say you can get anywhere from 50 to 80 miles. But they also clarified on their website that that was with a rider using PAS1, so eco mode or the lowest level pedal assistance. And in my testing, PAS1 is limited to about 8 miles an hour, which if I'm gonna do a range test, 8 miles an hour isn't very practical or even realistic, especially on a bike that's gonna be throttled a lot of the time or going fast a lot of the time. So what I did is I went ahead and just threw out my normal standards, and I went full PAS5, max speed the whole time on throttle, and I was able to get 41 miles. Now that's pretty solid considering I wasn't really pedaling, I wasn't looking for any like modulated power or dynamic power assistance from a torque sensor. Just went all the way, you know, full blast, class 3 speeds as fast as I could, and I got 41 miles on a single charge. Now, had I used PAS 1, 2, and 3 at those lower speeds, maybe kept things under 15 miles an hour, I'm sure you're gonna see much more closer numbers to like 50 to 70 miles in range, but I wanted to kind of just give it a full-on torture test, just say, hey, when you're going full out, ramped up to 11, what kind of mileage can you expect? And I was able to get over 2 hours of riding and roughly 41 miles of range, so pretty solid numbers. Now, this bike and battery has a 2-year warranty, but I should clarify, right now it's a 2-year warranty. They're throwing an extra year of warranty on with a purchase. So you're getting 2 years when you buy right now. I don't know how long that lasts, but at a minimum, they have a standard 1-year warranty that comes with the bike. I just know right now, if you go on their website, it does have a 2-year warranty, which is an extra year just tacked on as kind of a perk for buying the bike. All right, so when we talk about the component lineup on here, it's going to be in line with what you'd expect at this $12.99 price point. So we have an 8-speed drivetrain here that's made up of a Shimano Altus 8-speed rear derailleur that does have kind of a bash guard cover on the outside edge of it, just in case you were to lay it down or slide your rear end into like a rock or something. That's going to protect that from bending the derailleur hanger and throwing off your shifting. Now that's mated to a 13 to 34 tooth rear cassette with a 52 tooth front chainring. Now the cranks are 170 millimeter alloy cranks, and the pedals are folding pedals for that folding process, which we'll do in just a second. And those are alloy folding pedals, which is kind of cool. We usually see flat plastic folding pedals, but having these be alloy just means they're going to last a little bit longer and not scuff up as easily as a plastic pedal, especially on something that goes off-road like this. Now, braking is handled by Logan hydraulic disc brakes, and they're a 2-piston caliper with 180 millimeter rotors front to back. And those rotors have a double thickness on them of 2.3 millimeters. That thicker rotor material is just going to help with cooling and longevity of the pads and the rotors themselves. And on a bike with a lot of rolling mass where they're going to heat up, that's a really solid upgrade for them to do that most people don't pick up on when they order a bike. But when we look at so many, we pick up these little differences, and that little difference may have cost them a little bit more money in production, but it goes a long way in preserving the life of your brakes. Now, the saddle up top, as you can see, this is a saddle like we don't normally see. I'll kind of pull it out here and show it to you. It's got these curved edges that are worth showing to you. Kind of curves up on the side, not like a normal saddle that we're used to seeing. And then on the back here, we have that tail light I talked about with the on and off button. Now, this is a 30.9 millimeter alloy seat tube that has about 7 inches of adjustability there and a quick release lever here. Now, I'll be completely honest. I wanted to kind of hate this saddle when I got the bike because it just looked so different. I thought, oh, it's gonna be kind of goofy, but when I got on it, it's a surprisingly comfortable saddle. So if you're somebody who likes, you don't care what the saddle looks like, you just want comfort, this is a saddle that does not disappoint. Now, moving up front, we have, actually below the saddle, we have the rear shock. Now this shock is made by Sheng Shun, it's the LB50 rear shock. There's no adjustable air valves on it. There's no indicators of whether it's air or coil. So I'm gonna assume that because there's no way to add air to it, that it is probably a compact coil spring in there, but I really have no idea. You can feel it working just a little bit, but you probably feel more in this rear suspension or the rear plushness of this saddle. But between the rear shock and the saddle, it's a very comfortable ride. I never felt like I needed more suspension, at least for just daily comfort when riding around. Even on like rough gravel roads, it's a really comfortable setup. Now up front, we've got this moto-style double crown fork with about 80 millimeters of travel. It's also got a compression ring here that you can lock it out if you want like that to keep it from compressing, or you can unlock it and reopen it back up with a preload adjustment on the front. Now I say it's about 80 millimeters of travel on this because they don't list it on their website how much travel it has. So I took my micrometers and I just measured the amount of used space on those 34 millimeter stanchions, and I got a roughly 80 millimeter travel measurement. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, but I think 80 is a pretty safe guess on this. Now up front here in the cable management area, so we've got all the cables routed to these tie wraps and then down into the frame. The bar itself is going to be a BMX style handlebar. It's about 29 inches across, and you've got a mountain bike fixed stem here, kind of a stubby stem. Now, the BMX handlebars themselves kind of keep things upright and comfortable, and they're swept back a little bit, so it's a very comfortable ride when you ride this. Now, both ends have slide-on rubber grips, so these are not lock-on grips, just something to keep in mind. You have a twist throttle on the right side. You have your PAS controls here on the left side, and over here on the right, you have your Shimano under the bar trigger shifters with an 8-speed window, just to let you know what gear you're in. And then both ends have the Logan hydraulic disc alloy brake levers. But let's take a look here in the center at the display, and we'll take a closer look at it and kind of take you through the menus and how all that works. All right, so this is the home screen on the Euybike K6 Pro's display. Up in the top left corner, we have a battery bar, which is a 5-bar indicator. The top right, we have our PAS levels, which as I cycle through them, you can see that change there. In the middle is our miles an hour current speed. Down here is our trip meter, but if I hit the I button and tap that, I can toggle through some other metrics like the odometer, the time in minutes on this current ride, max miles an hour on this current ride, and average on this current ride. They're all 0 right now because I just turned it on for filming this today. But when you're riding, those will have metrics related to that ride that you're on. One more will take you back to the trip meter. I'm gonna tap it again just to leave it at the odometer. And then if you wanted to get in some more advanced settings, you can hold the plus and minus, and that will take you to the advanced settings menu. But as you can see, these are code-based, so you'll need to get the manual and kind of go through and look for the code that you need to make the adjustments, because none of them that when you glance at them are going to make any sense. But you can adjust things like screen brightness, wheel size, change between class 2 and class 3. You can even tweak some of the voltage numbers if you're feeling brave. Not something I would mess with, but that is there in the event that you do go in there and start to play with that. Now to back out, I'm just going to hold this minus button on the display pad, and that will take us back to the home screen where it refreshes and you're good to go with your new settings that you've just applied. Now there is no there is no app for Eubikes, so that everything you need is right here in the display and based on these buttons, and that makes up the display. All right, so let's go ahead and fold up the K6 Pro. Still different than you're used to seeing, but it has some similarities. So the similarities are the folding pedals, which I've already folded. Now, normally on other brands, you have like a big latch here to unfold, but on this one, you have this twist lock underneath. So I'll lefty-loosey that so it's opened up. And that will allow me to kind of open this up. And as you can see, it exposes that battery compartment that we talked about that you can only access when the bike is folded. So I will pull the keys out and drop the battery. All right, so got this battery out, but as you can see, I still have to lift up on the front end. There's not quite enough room where I'm seated at. This is that 1200 watt-hour battery. It's got a meter here so you can see the battery charge it from the outside, but to pull it out, you do have to have it in this folded position. So I'll put it back, same way I got it out. And then I will lock that in place. And that will allow me to fold the bike back up. And then once it's straight, I will do the righty-tighty on the twist lock here. And I can hear that lock in place and tighten up, and you're good to go. All right, guys, we're out here on the Euybike K6 Pro, or otherwise known as the K6F, which is their Pro version, or their more beefed up version of the popular K6. So this thing, the one thing you just can't ignore on this bike is the speed and power. So it's got a 1000 watt rear hub motor that peaks at 1500 watts, and it pumps out 96 Newton meters of torque. It's very punchy, very quick, and it's running on a cadence sensor, which I prefer on a moped style bike because torque sensors rely on natural pedaling feel. And I just personally feel like when you're on a moped style bike, you're generally someone who's not looking to be on the Tour de France. You're looking to throttle around town, have a good time, be playful with it, and you want that all or nothing power that a cadence sensor gives versus some dynamically applied power based on how hard you're pushing the pedals, which just wouldn't make a lot of sense for something that's, you know, full suspension, all-terrain tires, and just basically a punchy moto style bike to begin with. Now, comfort-wise, it's really comfortable. You got a nice upright seating position, BMX style bars here, this really wide, comfortable saddle. It kind of curves up on both sides, and it kind of just lets you settle in, and your tailbone's not sliding around anywhere on the seat. You just stay nice and secure in there. I will say, they say it fits up to 6'5". I'm 5'11", and I feel like for the seat and my quad length, like the distance out to my knees and where my hips are on the seat, I don't know that if I was 6'3", 6'4", this would fit as well. So if you're up there in that range, like 6'3" or above, I would definitely check, maybe test ride one first, because I don't know how well it would fit at those extreme heights. But for me, 5'11", 6 foot, those areas, it's gonna be just fine. You can already see this thing wanting to take off on me here. So let's go into the neighborhood here. And there's a big like quarter-inch hill that has, not quarter-inch, quarter-mile hill that has about a 5 to 7% grade. And we'll just shoot up that and see how this thing performs. All right, so we'll do the stop sign. It's clear. All right, so let's head up this hill. Let's just throttle it, see how it does. So we're accelerating up the hill. It's not even holding, it's just pushing up the whole time. And I'm on throttle, and we're up over 20 miles an hour. Looks like we're gonna hold here at 20, which on a throttle is just what it should do. But what happens if I start pedaling? Now, if I'm pedaling, I'm not pedaling crazy fast, but we're still able to accelerate just a bit. My app says 24, and my display says 21, so I'm not sure which is more correct. I'm gonna go with the app, but that's just a guess. Either way, tons of power going up these hills. No issues at all. Now, I will say the cadence sensor is a little unique. I did say I like the all or nothing power, which is true. This cadence sensor has a little bit of a delayed personality, and I'll show you what I mean when I say that. Cadence sensors, essentially, just like they sound, they use the cadence of the pedals, so that rotation, of the crank arms going around to say, oh, they're pedaling, let's send a signal to the motor to go. Well, depending on the cadence sensor you get, they're programmed all sorts of different ways. Some turn on within almost immediate rotation of the pedals. Others take up to a half a full turn. This one takes, I think, over a full turn, but let's just see right now. So I'll start with my leg in the up position and I'll start pedaling. I'm at one full rotation, so just over a full rotation and it goes. Now on the flip side of that, if you want to just go with the throttle, you don't need anything. The throttle's just right there and ready immediately. So the brakes on here are made by Logan. They're hydraulic disc brakes, 2-piston calipers, 180mm rotors. Pretty standard setup for almost all e-bikes these days. Let's see how they perform coming down a hill. All right, so we're about 24 miles an hour, 3, 2, 1. So a nice, quick, controlled stop. And I actually could have gone harder on those brakes, but I was trying not to lock up that rear pedal, or that rear wheel. Now the back has a rear rack that can support up to 200 pounds, and it's got some really cool, like, unique modulated hooks and areas to place hooks, so you can strap things down in different ways. But with that said, that's the only place I've been able to find that you can attach accessories. There's no water bottle, like Boss mounting points for water bottle cages or accessories. So everything you put on this bike will either be on the rear rack or, you know, in your bag, on your backpack or something like that. Now I think the cool thing about this is it's going to be good for anybody on, you know, like college students getting around town, getting to work, but still having something that you can go play with on the weekends. You've got the front to back lighting, the front suspension fork, which has a lockout and actually feels pretty good. I will say the rear shock on here, I can see it when I look down actuating just a bit, but I don't know how much I feel, and I think that's largely due to the super wide, comfortable seat doing so much of the heavy lifting for the rear end. As far as felt suspension and felt comfort, that rear seat soaks up so much that it just feels, you know, the rear shock may be doing a lot and it may not. I wouldn't know either way, because I think the rear seat, or the rider seat here, just does so much work for you. Let's do a little throttle test to 20, see how long that takes to get up. It's a nice straight stretch. So 3, 2, 1. So we're at 16, 18, and 20. 22. Before it finally kind of capped itself off there. I do have, sounds like my front brake rotor might be a little bit off center, causing a little bit of a metallic sound as it rubs. But that's just something I can fix real quick with a couple Allen wrenches. Now the motor, as you can tell, is not silent. There's definitely got that moped motor sound to it. And that's just because these things are pumping out 25 amp hours, 48 volts, up to 1500 watts. They're doing a lot of work. And then you've got this massive 1200 watt hour battery that still gives really solid range. So it's a pretty unique setup that you can get, you know, even at full blast. I still got over 40 miles. So had you been at PAS 1 or 2, granted that'd be slower, but you'd likely see 50, 60, 70 miles in those lower pedal assist levels. But even at PAS 5, maxed out the whole way, getting over 40 miles, it's really a solid option for getting around town, getting to school, and then still having something you can go play with on the weekends. If you guys go camp or want to just have a little fun with them, they can still do that. And with a 400-pound max payload, or max capacity, you can take quite a bit of gear with you, but just remember it's limited to that rear rack because there's no other mounting points. But let's go back, let's put it up on a stand, and we'll talk about it from more of like an owner's perspective, maintenance things you might not be seeing when you're on the website, just things you don't want to find out the hard way once you buy the bike. We'll try to clue you into some of those now. All right, so let's talk about some things that are not so much review related, but more just some heads up to you as the consumer. When you look at a bike online, it's easy to look at all the positives and look at the marketing lingo and see everything. and make you think you know what you're getting when you get the bike. But then sometimes when the bike arrives, there's just things you might not have noticed that could, had you known beforehand, might have influenced your decision. So we like to go through some kind of hidden goods and some hidden not so goods about every bike, just to give you a heads up about the things you may not be used to seeing or may not pick up on just when you're looking at the website. So first things first, I'll start with all the good. This is a really cool frame design. It's got a nice beefy hinge point that doesn't look like it's gonna fail anytime soon. It rotates really nicely. And also this frame design is being so unique, we don't have chain stays, that bar that goes from the bottom bracket to the rear hub. And usually when you have those, you have to protect them with some sort of film or rubber mount that will, when the chain slaps against it, it'll just protect it from the chain beating it to death. But because of that design, we don't have a chain stay, and we have no need to worry about those chain stays getting beat to death by the chain over time. So just a cool design in general. Now, the other thing that's going to be good about this from an ownership standpoint is the components on here. So everything from your hydraulic disc brakes, your Shimano under the bar trigger shifters, your chain ring, your cassette, your rear derailleur, your brake calipers and rotors, all those are commonly found parts at your local bike shops or on Amazon or bike retailers online. You can get all these parts replaced for pretty cheap and get them pretty quickly no matter where you live. They're pretty accessible. So these aren't really unique proprietary parts that require sourcing. They're just gonna be easy to replace and repair as you go. And you can find out information about all of these parts online, how to improve them, how to maintain them. They're just commonly known things that are gonna be easy to take care of and last with the bike. And in the event they don't last, you can find replacements really easily. Now, with that said, let's talk about some of the things that can be a little bit of a hang up on this bike. Now, I'm gonna go back to this frame. I do like the frame, I like the design, I like the hinging mechanism, I like that there's no chainstay, but there's also gonna be a downside to this really unique design or proprietary designs, and that's going to be the way that there's lots of proprietary parts in here. So the hinging mechanism itself, any pivot points along the frame where the front and rear triangles kind of pivot with each other, those are all gonna have, I would assume, fairly unique parts that are not gonna be as easy to find, and you'll need to rely on the brand to keep these parts in stock over the years to come so you can source them in the event something does break or go bad on your bike. So that's something to either buy some early when you buy the bike so you have spares on hand, or just keep in contact with the company and know that should you need them a couple years down the road, they may or may not have those. I don't know how they plan on, how many years parts they plan on keeping on hand, but that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, another thing that might be a hang-up for some people, we talked about it with the battery folding on the bike. You can't remove this battery unless you fold the bike. Now, in some cases, that's no big deal if you don't ever remove the battery, but a couple times a year, maybe during winter, to take it off the bike for storage. But if you're someone who lives downtown and you park your bike downtown and you lock it up and you take that battery out with you, take it upstairs to charge, take it upstairs for safekeeping, whatever you do with your battery, if you're used to being able to drop it or want that feature easily, it's just not gonna be as easy on this bike because you do have to fold this bike. It's roughly 80 pounds and it's just a lot of muscling to get that battery out. But if you don't need to worry about that, it's in there in place and you can access it with just a quick fold. Just something to keep in mind if you do want everyday access to your bike's battery. Now, I have two more things. These are gonna be fairly small things. This one's gonna start with the derailleur. Now, this is a derailleur with no chainstay on the frame design, so bouncing when you're going off-road is not gonna be that big of a deal. For protecting the frame, you won't have to worry about it hitting it. But when you don't have a clutch derailleur or a derailleur with more tension on it, you get a lot of slop in the chain. Now, when you're driving around town, that's no problem at all. You'll never notice it. But if you do go off-roading and you get a little rowdy on some light off-road trails, the more bouncing you do, the more odds you have of dropping that chain. It's slipping off a sprocket or a chain cog and kind of just, you drop a chain, your chain falls off the gears, you got to pull over, you got to put it back on. Not really a big deal. And frankly, it's only going to be a big deal if you're doing some pretty heavy off-roading. If you're doing light gravel roads or riding around town, I don't think you'll ever worry about it. So not so much of a con, just something to be aware of if you do plan on doing a lot of off-roading. Now, the final one is going to be this saddle. I love this saddle, even as silly as I thought it looked. It's extremely comfortable, and that part I'm not gonna take away from it. What I am gonna take away from it, though, is the integrated light design with the battery compartment and the button to turn it on. I'm not a huge fan of battery-powered lights on any bike because it's something I gotta remember to replace, I gotta remember to turn off in some cases. I'd rather just see, because you have extra room up here, I'd rather just see them integrate the light into the frame, run a little wire to it, a power wire, and it can run with the bike's electronics and keep it out of the seat. Over time, if you have to get a new saddle, if this thing rips, now you've got this light integrated into it. It's just another thing to think about. I'd just rather see that stuck into the frame. But all in all, that kind of makes up everything I had as far as the good and the bad, and just things to be aware of before you make a purchase on this bike. Hopefully that eased some of your minds or gave you some info that you didn't quite consider before. And all in all, still a fun bike to ride and no major issues that we found. All right, guys, so there you have it, the Euybike K6 Pro. This was a really fun bike. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before, with a different style folding mechanism, a different way of accessing the battery, just a different look in general. But at the end of the day, it still has that kind of off-road moto spirit. It's a very punchy, fast motor that peaks up to 1500 watts, nearly 100 Newton meters of torque, and just a really fun ride, especially with that punchy cadence sensor it has. If you're someone who likes to go off-road, but also likes to just cruise around town in a comfortable ride, this would be one that could do both of those really, really well. Now, if I got something about the bike you want to know that I didn't answer, just drop it down in the comments below. I'll figure it out and I will get back to you personally, so you have that information before you make a purchase. And until the next review comes out, I'll see you guys out on the trail.